Hello, everyone. Welcome to Automating Success with Joe Langton. Today, you'll notice my daughter is not sitting next to me. I have some very special guests. First, I'm going to introduce Chris Brodhead, who is actually my producer, and I thought it was a great time to let my audience introduce the man behind the curtain for us at Automating Success. I'm bringing him on the show. Chris is going to ask some questions of me. I'll get into why that's going to happen in a minute. And then I have someone that's near and dear to me, Vicky Kaczkos, who actually is my sister, even though you see no last name, but of course she's married. And she is a trauma nurse at a Trauma One hospital and actually runs a COVID unit. So as you can probably see, why do I have a very intelligent COVID nurse, my podcast producer, on a podcast called Automating Success. Well, anybody that follows the podcast knows that I've had a little hiatus for about a month and a half. And some of you have actually messaged me and asked, where the podcasts are. I had a very, very horrible run with COVID-19. As I tell people, I feel as if I really drew the short straw. But what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And now that I've recovered, I feel stronger than ever, very focused back on my businesses and everything that I'm doing. But for a little while there, I had to take care of myself because I realized quickly that if I wasn't whole and healthy, a lot of things that I've been working on, I would have to rely on other people to do. And I like to be the guy out in front with it. So, I guess with that, I'll say kind of some of the reasons I'm doing what we're doing today is I felt there's things about COVID that don't get reported about. You turn on the news and you see how many people have died. You go on social media and you hear how many people just felt like they had the cold or the flu. And it's a very divided camp. Everybody that follows me knows I'm not a political guy. I don't try to get into the politics. All I'm doing is talking about my experience. My experience is unique to me. Quite frankly, it was quite emotional. Everybody that loves and knows me, that's part of my inner circle, sees me as their rock, one of the strong people in their life. And I have to say that that was one of the most challenging things for me. And the reason it was challenging was when people were text messaging me, when they found out how sick I was, everybody kept saying, "You're the strongest person I know. You're going to get through this." Some people were texting me that had COVID at the time when I was sick and would say, if COVID takes you, I'm scared for me because there's no way a strong guy like you is going to die from COVID. I tell you, for as much as that sounds like the nicest thing someone could possibly say to you, it was one of the hardest things for me to digest. Those people were not quarantined with me in my room. My quarantine lasted much longer than the CDC says because I ran a fever for a very long time. I'll get into all the details after I give this heartfelt opening, because this is me opening up to every one of you as my listener. So I'm going to tell you some of the emotional things I dealt with before we get into some of the medical things. December 10th, I was hanging out at a great friend of mine, my neighbor. Actually, I should say one of my best friends in my life in a short period of time since we met. Left his house at 11, fell asleep. Woke up at 12:30 and had a 101.9 fever. First thought that goes through my mind is, my gosh, I hope I didn't get my best friend neighbor sick because he has a blockage in his one of his arteries and he has a procedure he's supposed to go to. And the first thing his doctor tells him is, all you have to do is not get sick. And that's the first thought that goes through my mind. I don't think about me having COVID. If I have the flu, all I think about is, I hope I didn't get my best friend sick because he's supposed to go in for a procedure in a few days. I wake up the next morning and I felt like I got run over by a truck just from the legs down. My legs hurt so bad, it was crazy. But at that moment in time, I feel like maybe I just have the flu. I'm kind of in COVID denial, probably just have the flu, no problem. I get my test results December 14th. Now here's where I loop Vicky in a little bit, and I'll kind of set the stage for why it was really important for me to have her come on this episode. I start to text my sister. I tell her the symptoms I have. I have a weird metallic taste in my mouth. My nose is very dry. I'm hardly making any saliva, even though I have this weird taste. I'm running, at this point, mid-grade fever. Nothing's crazy yet. And, you know, at this point, I have a little bit of a dry cough, not much. And I feel like I'm kind of surviving. The biggest thing is the body pains. So I talked to Vicky, and she says, you know, Joe, here's the thing. Everything I know, the worst is, and Vic, correct me on this, like days 7 to 10, right? Or maybe it's a little earlier than that.
That actually is what they were saying at first. I think it is getting a little earlier as the disease goes on, but yeah, that's when people will end up in the hospital, is day 7 to 10.
Okay.
But now day 4 to 7 is what they're actually saying.
All right. So she tells me day 7 to 10, right? So I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, I'm feeling terrible, but I'm feeling good about the fact that my cough is not that bad. I feel like I just have a bad case of the flu. And it is what it is, right? I have it because December 14th, I get my positive test result. Now, one of the things that was terrible for me, everybody knows how much I love my daughter. I find out she has it Sunday. Sunday, she texts me, because I had gotten it on a Friday. She texts me on Sunday, Dad, I don't feel so good. You know, so of course I'm concerned about my daughter, but I'm already quarantining. So she's in her room, I'm in my room. I tell her, take her temperature. She tells me she has 102.7 fever. Now, anybody that's a parent, you know, knows that you quickly think about your children before yourself. So I'm in my room feeling terrible, staying in my room for the other 4 people in my house, so they don't get it. And, you know, so I know she's sick, right? So this is just kind of the emotional, like just I'm setting the thing here. And December 18th, I wake up and I call my sister and I go, man, Vic, my lungs are burning. I don't know if you remember this conversation, Vicky, but my lungs, I mean, as I take a breath, I can't even describe the burn. I guess the best way I can describe it is if you took a really hot shower and then ran downstairs and ran outside and it was like 15 below zero. Okay. And then you took a really deep breath. And that burn you would feel when you breathe in that like super cold air. That's how it felt. But it felt like that every breath I took. And I knew it wasn't normal. That was not a normal thing. And so at this point now, you know, I'm concerned. And I will say, I got to backtrack. There was one day, Vic, I'm sure you'll remember this, where it was like the weirdest thing. This was probably like day 5, maybe. I was like, I think I kicked it. I think I'm over it. I feel really good. I'm like, I'm on the other end of this, Vic, and my sister tells me, Joe, I got to tell you, I'm cautiously optimistic for you because this is like a common thing, right? And holy shit, that couldn't have been more accurate because I think it must have been the day before the burn starts because I fall asleep that day and I wake up and I'm like, son of a bitch, she should have been just purely optimistic because she was fucking right, you know? But anyways, so. Okay, so now that she tells me, you know, you should definitely go to the emergency room. I'm kind of, you know, thinking, I don't really want to go to the ER. I don't like to go to the doctor. I never go to the doctor. And then I notice there's a little bit of blood on my pillow and I'm thinking, where's the blood coming from? At first, I think it's my lips. Then I'm thinking maybe it's my tongue because I have really bad dry mouth. And then I cough again and there's a little bit of blood. Like I see a little bit of blood spray. So then I'm thinking maybe it's my lips bleeding. And when I'm coughing, it's coming out. So I go in my bathroom. I'm coughing really bad at this point. I cough again and there's cough in my phlegm. Now the irony, I don't know if Vicky, you'll remember this, but at first when I tell her I'm coughing up blood, you were like, probably not. Right. I mean, you were like,
I don't think I was as worried about it as you. I was like, you're coughing up blood. Your house is dry. You've been sick for a while. It's okay. It's kind of actually what went on in my head.
Okay. Well, let me tell you what, see, she sees this crazy shit every day. You know, I mean, she's told me tons of stories, which we can't talk about because we cannot talk about any of her patients, but I am not her patient. I'm just her brother. But, she tells me stories, and Chris, I'm sure you'll elaborate on this. When a normal person coughs up blood, you're like, yeah, I'm going to the fucking doctor. Like, this is terrible. There's a real problem, right? I mean, would you not, Chris?
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's a major red flag.
Yeah. So now I'm like, okay, maybe I should go to the doctor. Okay. Now, I still have a little lingering cough from it, by the way, which is crazy because December 10th and it's January 23rd and I'm still coughing. But anyways, so now I do go. Now, this is an important thing for me to say on the podcast, and I'm sorry to my guests because I'm stealing all the wind here, but we're gonna get into some other stuff here. But at this point, everyone in my house, I'm just quarantined in my room. They hear me coughing really bad. They know I'm not doing well, but no one has really seen me yet, right? So I come walking out of my room and I tell my fiance, I'm going to the hospital. I having trouble breathing. I'm coughing up some blood. I need to leave. This is something that never gets talked about, and I don't want anybody to think I'm like soft with this. I think it's great for people to have emotions. As a matter of fact, I think some of the most successful people in the world, you have to be emotional to be a good salesperson. So usually I'm on an emotional high. This is an emotional low point for me. So I literally wondered if that moment, it was the last time I was going to see everybody. This is something that does not ever get talked about with it, because it's not the things that get talked about on the news, right? But I'm going to paint the picture when you have COVID. You get it. You hope it's not going to be bad. The majority of us, it's not bad, but for the few that it is, you have to go to the hospital by yourself unless you call the paramedics because you don't want anybody in your family to get it. So you drive yourself to the hospital when you can barely even walk to go to the bathroom. You have all of your kids in my case, my fiance, crying as I leave the house. And as I pull out of my driveway, I look at the house that I work so hard for, that I love. I'm in love with where I live. Chris knows a lot of my friends and people I network with live in this subdivision. And I literally wonder if it's the last time I'm going to see my house. Now, this is not a normal thought, right? Typically, when you get really sick, they diagnose you and they tell you have 6 months or you have a year or you get in a bad accident and you never have this thought. But with COVID, you realize the minute you leave your house to go to that hospital, they're not going to allow a visitor. Nobody's coming to see you. You may never see your shit again. Like this might be it. It's a really low moment and feeling. So I told you guys I'm not doing this for any politics, but I actually am doing it for the people, the 400,000 people that have died of COVID, for the people that have recovered from COVID. And it's this group of people that I think kind of gets lost in the shuffle for the people that haven't had it or had it so minorly that they just think it's just what it is. So that's how I felt. I got to the hospital. I couldn't even tell the women or that were there what was wrong with me because I was crying. Couldn't understand why, but I was crying and I'm trying to tell them I can't breathe while I'm crying, which was making me not be able to breathe even worse. And thankfully, I got admitted. And I actually drove to Elgin because my sister told me don't make the mistake of going to a small emergency room. So I drove myself all the way to Elgin and they did some blood work, which we're going to share and we're going to ask some questions about. And basically told me I had, and Vic, pop in because I never pronounce this right, but I had like glass something pneumonia, but basically my lungs looked like broken glass. Okay.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce that? Do you even know, or is it like the?
I can't think of the term right now, but do you have your report in front of you? It's right on there.
I know, but I do.
I actually can't think of the term. I'm a little distracted. And my dog's going in and out of my house, to be honest.
Oh, okay. Well, this is how podcasts nowadays work, because you have Zoom and your life doesn't stop around you, and you pray that you can do this. Well, anyways, doesn't make a difference, right? Basically, here's the thing. If I found it, nobody's going to remember how to pronounce it anyways.
Right.
But my lungs look like broken glass. Okay. So the good news is, though, my oxygen levels are not dropping to the point where they're going to admit me. They tell me, go home. We bought a pulse ox reader to check my oxygen levels at home. That's it. Now, I get home, my fever spikes to 103.5. For days, I have 103.5 fever every night. And every night I'm calling Vicky, and now it turns into like shit. 6 o'clock is coming because it's like predictable. Okay. What, right, Vic?
I actually warn you if you remember.
Yeah,
sometimes you would be like, I'm feeling so great. I'd be like, yeah, it's not 5:30 yet. We'll see.
Yeah. And then 6 o'clock would come and I'd be like, holy shit, is this going to be the last night for me? Like seriously, is this going to be my last night? Now, this is where, to all my business owner friends and every person that's following me is someone like me or aspiring to do what I'm doing. At this moment in my COVID, I realized the biggest mistake I've probably made in my life is I don't have an updated will. And I'm laying in bed thinking, how am I going to call my attorney and get my will updated? Last time I updated my will, I only had one business. Now I have several. How am I going to, who's getting left what? And these are all very real thoughts, because when you're sick, as I was, you realize that, you got to have your affairs in order. And I'm not trying to make this a morbid podcast, but it's a lesson I learned during COVID. Remember, I said that I came out on the other side, a stronger person. And this is one of the things that I'll never allow to happen again. So just a little advice to people: make sure your affairs are in order all the time, because you never know when your card's going to get called. So the fever, horrible. Here's a scenario. I feel like any other thing, and Vicky, you can comment to this. Any other illness, if you call the hospital or your doctor and say I have 103.5 fever, they tell you should come into the hospital and we'll see what we can do. With COVID, they tell you sit your ass at home, lay on some cold tile, go take a cold shower, whatever it takes. Do not come to our emergency room. Right? I mean, Vic, would you agree? It's totally different protocol.
Yeah. And actually they're admitting, like, everyone admits different now too. So like before COVID, people would get admitted for things. And like now with COVID, we try to keep people home longer also. So that's another thing too, because like even they were like, go home. You're beating this at home. Go home. Which is like, you think about other sicknesses. If you're really, really sick, they're like, we got to admit you. We got to watch you. But like COVID's just different for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. I mean, you feel like you're on an island, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing. And Chris, one of the reasons Chris was so like excited and to be on is, we have a professional relationship, but we also have a friendship. And I'm telling Chris this story. And the biggest thing that I said, right, Chris, was that you literally feel like I almost felt like I was like on a deserted island and I just had to fend for myself. And everything that was popping up, I just had to figure out. Like I had no saliva to eat. So what do I eat? Oranges, because at least they're wet. Okay, so at least with an orange, as I bite into it, it gives me some moisture so I can actually eat something. Because the only good thing that happened to me on COVID was I lost 22 pounds. And then the bad thing about the treatment was they gave me steroids to fight it. And I gained it all back because I ravenously ate. I feel like a bloated Goodyear blimp right now, So the only good thing that happened from COVID got counteracted to get the freaking pneumonia to go away, right, Vic?
Right.
And she knows it. I kept telling her, well, the good is I lost 22 pounds,
Yeah.
Yeah. But so very, very alienated. So then, one of the mistakes I made as who I am, I think people that follow know, I haven't drank any alcohol in 11 years. This was something I did for my fiance to help her in her travels of life. I don't smoke. I don't have any underlying conditions. Vicky, we'll attest to that, right? I mean, I'm a healthy guy. Chris, you've met me, healthy guy,
Yep.
And like I said, like just totally rocked me, I actually kind of lost my train of thought where I was actually going to go with that. But so now I go back to work. This is what I would say. So I'm working through the whole thing because I have to. There's appointments I had set, and some things I can do. Heck, I was taking Zoom calls on my phone, just not showing my picture and not telling people I was sick. A lot of those failed because I was coughing so bad that people realized I was sick and said, "Hey, man, we're going to reschedule this," because I feel like they thought they were going to get sick over the phone. Like that. That's how much I was coughing, right?
Wow.
So we deal with that, and then it snows. So my dumb ass goes and I plow. And my sister Vicky knows, like, she's like, "You better not be going out. You got pneumonia really bad."
I wanted you to have your rest. I think we have to be clear too. When you were going to work, you weren't exposing other people because you were always alone.
Yes, correct.
But you still need your rest, and you should not be pulling an all-nighter. Plowing was my point of it.
Yeah, well, and so everybody knows, like, it's important for me. So my company is I have literally the best people at Langton Group. And actually, I'm glad, Vicky, like, you kind of made me think about something I need to say. My brother, John, I wish I could have had him on here today, except his daughter's a volleyball, literally is the best business partner you could possibly have. I mean, here's the thing. You want to talk about one of the benefits of being an entrepreneur? I was able to be sick for a month in 2 weeks, basically, and never worry once that my business was still thriving. Okay. I have the most fantastic people that run my business for me. My brother being the rock, and then my general manager, Tanner, my sales manager, Tony, my cousin, Kyle. I mean, literally, I could name every person off at the company because I was sick and I never questioned once if there was going to be a problem with the company. But the reason I plow is because I've always said to people, like, I've never wanted somebody to call me boss. I'm a leader. So leaders figure it out and go out, because I've had employees work for me with the flu. When it snows, I've had people come in with a broken arm. As long as they can steer the truck and plow, they can work. So I didn't want to be a hypocrite. So I go out and I worked, even though I was told not to. But anyhow, I went out the first night and kind of pushed my limits a little bit. And then we had another snow. And in that one, I worked for 31 hours, and unfortunately caused a massive relapse to me. Okay. Started coughing really badly. Had to go back for another chest x-ray. Unfortunately, my COVID pneumonia turned into bacterial pneumonia. So they gave me steroids, antibiotics. At this point, I'm on a baby aspirin. By the way, I didn't say, but the skin peeled off my left foot, or my ankle and the top of my foot. Vic, I think it's fair to say we still don't really know what the hell that was all about anyways, but right?
No.
Yeah.
We don't. But in fairness, I've seen that on COVID people, but I don't think, like, and I'm not a true expert, but I don't think we know a lot of things about COVID still. So, like, as COVID happens, that's one of the things that, like, in the healthcare profession, I mean, like, I've been a nurse for 18 years, and you kind of, like, most things you're like, yeah, this is what happens with this. That's one thing with COVID. I mean, like, when we went from being like a trauma ICU to a COVID ICU, like, you were learning as you go. And I think we're still, as a medical community, learning as we go with COVID. So I think as more and more happens and people report to their doctors, oh yeah, I had, like, weird skin peeling, we're going to see more and more that probably happens more than what we know in people that had a bad case of COVID like you did.
Yeah. I mean, why do you, and you've already said this is an opinion. This is not like
right.
gospel here, but
right.
I mean, what do you think could cause it?
So I don't know. Like, I mean, it could be you were having high fevers and then always in bed, your skin is dry, you're kind of sweating. And, like, some people will get, like, fever rashes. Like, did you end up getting, like, skin peeling just from something similar to that? I don't know. Was it something to do with your hydration status? Maybe. I mean, I don't know. And I think, like, something too, like, you've somewhat touched on, like, you had, like, so many different, like, branches of what went on with COVID. Like, I think the general public feels like it's COVID, it's the flu. Well, the thing about the flu is, The flu just makes you have a fever and maybe not be able to breathe. You had a lot of things going on. I mean, like if you think about it, like you had your fever, you couldn't breathe, you had your skin peeling. I remember at one point you said when you took a shower, like your whole skin hurt.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
so it's like, there's like a neurological component, obviously, that's going on with it because you're having like, just like different sensations with your skin. So there's like, that's the thing that makes COVID so different than everything else, is that it affects so many body systems. Like I've seen people in kidney failure with COVID. Like, why would your kidneys fail? So it just, and that's, I think what makes people so sick is that it affects so much of you, but everyone's different. Some people, like Julia felt pretty good. It just depends on you.
Well, and one of the things that I always thought was weird was like the confusion, which I always wondered, is this COVID or is this 103.5 fever for 4 nights, and then also remember me not being able to hold things with my right hand. I mean, listen, Chris, I mean, there was a period of time where, like I said, I was worried like I had a mini stroke or something, and we'll get into the blood work. I mean, my clotting factor was high. So that was the big thing. They put literally the fear of God in you. Like if your leg feels like this, or you get a hot sensation, you have a clot. If your lung instantly starts hurting, you can't breathe, you have a clot. If your heart hurts, you have a clot. And I'm thinking everything hurts. So where's the clot? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and again, that's the other kind of crazy thing about COVID, because that's another thing, like it makes you clot. So your numbers get all out of whack and then you clot. And that, like in the beginning, was what they were thinking some people were dying from. We're just like showering like microemboli, which are like small clots. So like it is scary with COVID. I mean, I was scared for you when you went to the hospital and you were like, they're going to do a CAT scan. And I was like, oh shit, they think he has a clot. Like I thought that right in my head, I mean, it is a scary thing with COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, so, man, I just got the dreaded internet is unstable code on my computer here. So hopefully we're okay in a minute. But then the other thing, and then we're done with my symptoms. So my feet went numb, right? And you said that's something that happens in COVID too, Vic. And then I got like almost arthritic and confused. Do you have any, I mean, why do you think what's the arthritic thing? Like, what's your opinion on that, Vic?
I wonder, like just myself, just thinking like almost if it's just because you have so much inflammation. So, like something me and Joe were talking about with some of his labs, which I think we'll probably touch on, but like you always like think about your body when it fights an infection, like you have like your white cells, which are fighting the infection usually, but like, it's like almost like your body's having war with whatever virus or bacteria you have. But then like some of his levels were elevated, and it was like they're elevated because you're having like extra inflammation, things like that, because your body is fighting so hard. And I kind of think like some of your just like pain in your like joints and stuff like that, I wonder if some of it was just the whole like cytokine storm and like the swelling and the inflammation that was happening. And you did have a fever for a long time, and you were in bed for a long time, and you're not usually in bed for a long time. So some of that also kind of plays into it.
Yeah. Well, it probably is a good time to go into the blood work, right? Wouldn't you agree, Chris?
Yeah.
So, all right. So white blood cell, this is, I'm not going to go through all my blood work. I'm going to go through the top 5 that they basically were like, hey, this is like not right. Right. So white blood cell count says it's supposed to be between a 4.2 and an 11. Mine was a 3.2. So Vic, comment to that, I'm a business guy, but not a medical professional,
Yeah. So the white cells are, like I said, they're the ones that fight infection. So it's actually interesting because yours are low. So sometimes though, when you have like a severe infection, you'll either go high, when I say high, like sometimes it's 25, 30 that we'll see, not always in COVID, but, just in general. And then you're low. So sometimes you could also kind of almost have like where the white cells are low when you have an infection also. And I kind of wonder if that's what yours did. I necessarily myself personally haven't like seen such a big correlation with that, with the white counts. Again, the people I see are usually they're all in an ICU, so they're pretty bad. But I just think it's yours were on the lower end, probably because of the COVID. You were just flipping. Instead of being a high white count, you were a low white count.
So,
people with low white counts often are like somebody that's like immunosuppressed or immunocompromised. Like that's not necessarily you, because you didn't do anything to make yourself immunocompromised. Like you don't have cancer. You didn't go through chemo. You weren't getting like any sort of immunosuppressants. It just probably was your immune system and just the way it was battling the COVID.
well, so what they told me, the doctor at the ER, was that there's a component in COVID that actually attacks your immune system almost like HIV would. So, but from what you're saying though, some people, when they come in, they're high. So what do you think it is that part of COVID triggers? Because what they told me was their thoughts were that, I guess white blood cell counts are in our bone marrow even, so like for a guy like me that instantly spiked a fever, the reason I could have ended up so sick was the COVID one after my white blood cell count, like literally that part of COVID hit first. So do you have is there any talk, from you guys, like why that happens or what your opinion is on that?
No. I think what the ER told you is accurate, but I don't really have an opinion like necessarily like that. I feel really strongly. I see a lot of people like it that way. And again, I think that's just one thing that like I want to stress. That's the thing with COVID. Like sometimes it's just different in different people. So it makes it way more complicated just to deal with in general.
Yeah, I just felt like that was like a surprising thing for me. And remember, Chris, in our conversation, what you and I talked about was, I get there and I think they're going to talk to me about why I can't breathe. And the first thing they start talking to me about is my white blood cell counts, and how this affected and why it affects and stuff. But it's something that I've never heard anybody talk about. And I always just wonder why, like why that doesn't get talked about, so that's all.
I think you have to think too, though, like, so if you have COVID at home and no one's ever going to draw your white cells. So people might not even know that they're at home. They don't feel well, so that might be part of why it just doesn't get talked about as much. And then if you end up in the hospital, like usually it's because you really can't breathe. So I think people are just so focused on like the immediate threat to them. And from like a nurse perspective, who's with people a lot as they're not well, I think sometimes it's like you just get so overwhelmed. So they probably are just focusing on, I can't breathe, and not worried so much about like their white count and stuff.
Okay. So one of the things that my sister and I, like we talked about with COVID, when we were talking about the inflammation. So there's this ferritin, okay, and it should be between a 26 and a 388. And mine was a 472. So expand on that a little for me, because I'm not going to even try to.
Again, I'm going to just kind of keep it pretty simple, because it's just showing us that your body is fighting and you're having inflammation. Same thing, like your LDH, that one was high too. Yeah, the LDH, it was 86 to 234. I was 266. Yeah. So that's just kind of showing us that like your body is fighting and you're having like inflammation. So which is the one like then? The LDH also like kind of, these things could be way more complicated, but like, it's also just kind of showing like, sometimes like tissue damage. So like, you're kind of just thinking about like, again, like when I like put it just to keep it just simple, but like your body's like fighting this. And then this is kind of like the remains of what's happening. So a lot of these labs are going to show us like how sick you are, just because it's like, you're like how hard your body's fighting, kind of, if that makes sense. Yeah. So like the C-reactive protein, it says it should be 1 or less, and I was at 2.5. So like, what is that? Like, why was that so high? Because that one to me seems like really high. Yeah. So similar, like all these labs are pointing to like pretty much the same thing, like all just inflammation and just kind of that your body's fighting. The one on there that is different is like your D-dimer, which the hospital you went to uses something different than what we use. So I'm not as familiar with that like quantitative number or whatever, but D-dimers are something that's reflective of clotting. Yeah, and so my D-dimer was yours high. Was high. Yeah. And that's what we see a lot of. And that's what, that's why anytime you have COVID, we worry, do you have a clot, or are you going to clot? And depending on how sick you are and how high your D-dimer is, kind of tells us how worried we have to be if you're going to form a clot. So would you say that COVID is like as much a respiratory illness as it is a blood illness?
Or is it not one specific thing? Is it just a cumulative of everything that overwhelms your body? Because I know I felt like when you and I talked, and I know you're trying to keep it like simple for the people listening, but one of the things when I asked you about the C-reactive, why it was so high, and it's basically like a protein given off from like dying cells, right? So like my question that I would have is like, if I had the flu or a cold and I had my blood test, would all of those be that high? Or is this something that's particular to COVID?
So you gotta think about things a couple times. So first of all, when you have a cold, or if you have the flu, no one ever really draws those labs. So we wouldn't know if they were, but like COVID is different because COVID makes people way sicker. Like it just, and it does have a respiratory component, but it also has a clotting component. And it also has like, I mean, if you just think about you yourself, you have all these neurological issues at the time, you know, like you were like confused sometimes, like you couldn't hold your pencil. You had like dry, scaly skin patches, which is kind of affecting your skin. And then, you know, so you have, it's kind of affecting like all these different parts of you. And that is the thing about COVID. It's just that it, you know, from an ICU nurse perspective, it kind of takes over and it's hitting your whole body really, really hard.
So it almost felt like when I was looking up some of the stuff, because, you know, this is the problem with being quarantined and you can't leave the room. Google turns, is it your friend at some moments and your enemy at another, you know? So you start to look up, everything going on. And it's like, it almost is like your body goes into like a autoimmune or like overimmune response. It's like, I literally felt like my immune system was killing everything it could kill. It was just like, I'm taking you out. It was almost like Russia and the United States getting mad at each other and nuking each other. It's like, everything's gone now. Is that something you see, or like a good, assessment of how I was feeling, or is that not the case?
So if we're not talking about COVID, if people get an overwhelming infection that causes all these body issues, like all these different changes in labs and just to be as sick as like COVID people are, you call it like a septic shock. So it's sepsis, and sepsis is like a severe infection. And then septic shock is like what puts people in the ICU, basically because their body goes into shock. So because you're fighting and because this infection is trying to kind of take over, you end up, you know, people could get sick enough that they have a low blood pressure and have a high fever and their heart rate gets high and they have all these change in their vitals and they'll have change in labs. So it's like with COVID, it's not necessarily like you were like in a septic shock, but your body is kind of like acting like that, you know, because it's just like, first of all, you've got COVID and it's attaching to everything. And obviously in your case, replicating everywhere because you were so sick for so long, it really kind of took hold of you. So it's kind of the COVID coming at you and your body fighting it. It's like all of that at once is like happening. And that's what is making everything be out of whack and making you feel like crap.
Well, remember too, my heart rate, the biggest thing was, and remember you had me like really worried the one night because, you know, my heart rate was like high for a while, like 116 and I'm like worried. I'm telling Vicky, like my heart rate's high. Oh, and that's something I had to talk about was that weird heart flutter thing, which by the way, I still have. So listen. And
by the way, I told you need to get some more testing done on that.
I know, but oh my God, I know, but it's like, this is a hard thing. See, so like, I'll be one of those dumb shits that fucking die in 3 months or 3 weeks because I didn't get the test that Vicky told me to get. But because I truly hate going to the doctor. Like, this is why this is like, I'm telling you, for people that don't really know me, they're probably like, okay. But for people that know me, you have to know I have to almost be dead to go to the hospital. I mean, remember when I broke my finger, Vic, and it was like down to here? And I'm like, I think it's okay. Just relocate it. And I ended up needing pins and the thing was out anyways. But
actually, the funny thing to put this in a little bit of perspective too, you know, so I'm talking to Joe and like, I feel pretty comfortable like managing him from home. Like when he like, you know, told me right away, I don't feel good. I was like, order a pulse ox. Cause I'm like, great. We can watch your oxygen levels. Like then this way we have more information. Right. So, but every day I would talk to my parents and they'd be like, did you talk to Joe? And, you know, he's pretty bad. And I think you should make him go to the hospital. I'd be like, no, not yet. We're fine. And then they'd be like, yeah, we know Joe. Joe's not going to go. And I'm like, no, he doesn't need to go yet. So, I mean, like, just to kind of, you know, they're like, we all know you're not going to go yet. And I think that actually people that know you would know that then that day that I talked to you and I was like, Joe, I really think we should go to the ER. And you were like, I don't know. And even for me, when you were like, I'm going, I was like, yeah, he really doesn't feel well. Like I knew it, you know? And then, to kind of play into that too, people that know you well know that also, because the day that Joe was in the ER, like his best friend since we've been little actually called me, and I haven't talked to him in years. And suddenly I get a message on Facebook from Mike, and he's like, hey, I need to talk to you, because I think you made him worried because he knows you and is like, Joe went to the ER? He must be dying. So it is really true. Like, you are not someone that goes. So when you went, you're not the person that's just like, hey, I'm not feeling well today, I'm just going to stop by. You really were feeling like crap to get to go to the emergency room. And I'm very well aware of that.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad you brought up Mike, because if you ever listen to this podcast, so Mike doesn't have to listen to my podcast because we're just best friends and we talk all the time, but he literally, every day he would send me a text from the minute he found out, and he would send a text. And something I used to say when we played football together in high school was, if we messed up a play, Mike and I would both say to each other, not again, because I'm Joe fucking Langton. Or if Mike missed a block, it'd be like, I'm Mike fucking Corcoran. It's like kind of like what we did as linemen, like, because every lineman misses a block, right? I mean, it's not about messing up, it's about not allowing it to be a trend, right? So you get back up there and then you show that guy you're the man, So every day I'd wake up in the morning, Chris, and Mike would go, who are you? And if I didn't text, I'm Joe motherfucking Langton, he'd be like, wrong. Who are you? And that's like the type of friend he is. Like he was literally like, all right, man, we've been through some shit together. You are getting through this, which meant a lot to me. I'll say, and Vicky, I mean, I've told people, like, was my rock. I mean, every day I was talking to her. Every day she's telling me, and like I said, she's the person that said, okay, Joe, it's time now. You go and get your ass to the hospital, because if you wait longer than this and don't get some steroids and don't get IV fluids and don't get all this stuff, this might be the end, right? I mean, that was basically the conversation we had. And
it was, I think you have a tipping point, and everyone's is different, but I feel like with COVID, people ride it. And then all of a sudden they're not well, and they're in my face like, I can't breathe. And I think my worry for you was, how long can we really ride this out until, Joe's up there quarantined in his room, and, suddenly we're calling 911 because he just didn't go. So I wanted you to go because I was like, I need you to be seen. I, of course, wanted you to have the chest x-ray, things like that. So we kind of knew what we were dealing with a little bit more, because, and I remember telling you, like, it's better to go now and be safe than to be like, for me, and in the background thinking, how, like, when you were saying you were leaving your house, like, is this the last time? I didn't want to be later regretting it, being like, I should have made my brother go to the hospital. I should have made him go. So I was very relieved when you went, because I knew then we were making the right choice, and they sent you home, and that was good, but it was at least like almost like a peace of mind. Like, you're going to be okay,
Well, that was one of the things they told me, because when they admitted me, the first thing they're asking, do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you do drugs? They're asking me all these things. They're asking me if I'm active, this and that. And, maybe you can elaborate on this too, because they were like, listen, we don't want to keep you here because, there's really no need to put you on oxygen. There's no need to put you on a vent. If we put you on oxygen, it makes your lungs lazy. You definitely have good, strong lungs. So even though you've got some blood you're coughing up, your lungs are full, you have terrible pneumonia. I mean, that's something I need people to know. Like, I didn't just have pneumonia. I mean, every time I got a chest x-ray, they were like, you have terrible pneumonia, to the point where, and maybe it's a good point to get into this, Vic, but to the point where, they want me to go back for another chest x-ray here once the pneumonia actually clears. Cause I'm not even sure it's clear yet, to be honest with you, because I still have chest pain in my left lung. But from when my doctor saw my last chest x-ray, he literally told me to start to embrace the reality that I would never have the proper lung capacity. And something that's important, it's one of the main messages I want to get on the podcast, so I want to say it before I forget. And Vicky, you said it best. I didn't think this up. This came from my sister. Was when I got COVID, I didn't have any pre-existing conditions. Unfortunately, my pre-existing condition is COVID now.
And that's something that I think, I'm sure through the rest of my career, we're going to see a lot of, I have this wrong with me because I had COVID, or this, and I think the lungs, like, I'll be really interested as time goes on to see people, even with cases like you, because I mean, you were a severe home case, but like, I mean, like I see people obviously way sicker because I'm watching people die of COVID. But I mean, people's lungs get so stiff with this, and that's part of the problem why people can't breathe, because you can't, usually you take a big deep breath and your lungs fill with air, but when you have COVID, and a lot of people, they can't get that big breath because their lungs are just getting just very stiff. And I wonder, and I've said that to you before, are you going to have this forever? Probably. Are you going to have scar tissue? Probably. And it's true. Now it's going to be, I wonder, every time you get sick, is it going to be worse because you had a bad case of COVID and your lungs already have taken a hit? I think there's going to be a lot that we're going to see with COVID, just in general.
Well, remember I said to you, so if I was having to take a deep breath, I wouldn't. I mean, mentally, I couldn't almost get myself to, because it just hurt so bad.
Yeah.
I mean, my pneumonia was so bad that I remember I used to say to Vic, it felt like somebody was reaching in my chest and squeezing my heart. Like if I took a deep breath, it made me feel like I was giving myself a heart attack. So I just stopped breathing hard. Like right now, I took a deep breath because I know I need one. Okay. But when I had COVID, I would know I needed a deep breath, but I would also know if I tried to take that deep breath, it felt like I was going to give myself a heart attack. So I would mentally take a shallow breath. And you wonder if that's like the mental, like, starting point of this lung stiffening, because you just don't want to deal with pain. So one of the things that I think I'm counting my blessings on was that I had the horrible cough. Because, remember, Julia was calling you. So my daughter was calling my sister. You should actually
yeah, I would text Julia, and, I would always kind of check in. So I was talking to Joe, and a lot of times Joe would just call me, but I would just text Julia and be like, how are you? From the minute Joe actually told me he was sick, then I was always texting Julia, because I kind of was like, well, it's only a matter of time, so. But anyway, I would text her and be like, how are you? Good. And there was one night that we were texting, and she was like, I could hear my dad coughing in the other room, and it's really, really bad. And she was really worried about you based off just what she heard. So yeah, your cough was very, very bad. And then she didn't hear you coughing. And I was like, it's probably okay. He's probably sleeping. But I know she was worried.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the point where if Julia didn't hear me cough, she thought that was the end.
Yeah.
Like, I just was done.
Yeah. There was one night actually that I was like, he will not die from the coughing. It's okay. Cause it was bad. I mean, she could hear you, and it was definitely bad. It made her nervous.
Yeah. But what I said was, though, I felt almost blessed that I had the cough so bad, because when you have because you can't control the cough. And I had such a deep, like almost like a whooping cough. I mean, they say like COVID cough is like a dry cough, which is how it started. It would be kind of like there was nothing there. It just felt unproductive. Like I would cough, but it didn't do shit for me. But it turned into this, like, I don't know what you guys call it medically, whooping, barking, whatever the hell it was. But I sounded like a dying seal, I think, when I was coughing, And but yeah, that's, I think, more like what it sounded like. I think I did a better job than you and that, Chris. I don't know if you can do the job, but it forced me to breathe deep. It always, and it might be why I was bleeding, and maybe why the blood would kind of spray up every now and then, because even though my lungs were traumatized and inflamed, my body didn't give a shit. Like I was going to cough it up, right? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Vic, because I don't know if when the people come in, they're coughing really bad, or if they're hardly coughing, just saying they can't breathe,
Yeah. So I don't know. I kind of have had a mix. Again, a lot of times once they get to me, sadly, they're getting put on the ventilator. So with COVID, once you're on a ventilator, you're pretty sedated and you're not coughing anymore, because now you have a tube down your throat that's breathing for you, and I'm suctioning you. So, I mean, usually they're sedated enough they're not coughing. So my population is like pretty different than what you were, which actually, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes was what I was so interested in. Like, hey, how do these people at home hang out? Because I know that I see a very, very extreme version of COVID, so it was kind of just eye-opening, different to see it, like how people probably are feeling before they ever get to me.
Well, remember, one of our ideas Man, I got to tell you, I feel bad. We are stealing all the oxygen from Chris. I don't think we've given him a word edgewise here today. But
And we did warn you that we're kind of talkers. Joe and I are very similar in that regard.
I mean, Vicky and I, we're only like a year and a half apart, and we are like the same people. I tell people all the time, she's the female version of me.
Yes, exactly.
But now I actually say that about Julia. So now there's 3 of us. Holy shit, what's the world going to do? But
they're very lucky.
Yeah, but totally different professions, right? But I mean, you run your shit at work too, But the one of the things that we said, and I think why all 3 of us were so excited to do this is, I think that I was like, and Vic, comment on this so the audience doesn't think I'm just blowing smoke up their butts, but I think that I was like, I was at that weird threshold where I didn't have to be sedated, so I remember everything.
Yeah.
Like, this is what's important about my COVID experience. I remember everything I dealt with versus dealing with a lot of it in like practically in induced paralyzation. Because this is something else that, and I have to say, non-political, but a lot of my friends, very close friends of mine, unfortunately, still want to make this political and will call and be like, okay, so you had really bad COVID, but please tell me you're not going to get the vaccine. Or I know you had really bad COVID, but please tell me you're not going to be one of the maskers. Well, first of all, I always did wear a mask, which I guess there's an argument there because my friends say, well, see, you wore a mask and you still got COVID. Yeah, okay. I mean,
but we still,
and we think I got,
really
by the way, I almost forgot to say this. We think I got COVID because I fucked up. Man, Chris, I don't know if we're going to delete all this swearing. I'm doing this more than usual lately. See, this is a more personal podcast for me. I messed up and wore a mask that was in my truck after my truck was delivered from a repair shop. I'm not going to say the name of the shop. And, they're nice enough to porter our stuff back and forth. But when I put the mask on, it smelled like cherries. Okay. And I don't smell like cherries. I'm a manly dude. I don't vape. I don't do anything. I don't smell like cherries. Sometimes my mask smells like shit, which that's a problem in itself, I guess. But either way, I know the way my mask smells. I put this mask on and I'm like, oh, that's weird. And I wore it like a dumbass anyways. That was on a Wednesday and I spiked a fever on a Friday. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about viral load right now, because this is important.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important to explain to people about viral load and how bad you can get COVID with a high viral load.
So this is something that in the beginning, when there were so many nurses, especially like nurses in New York, I mean, they got pounded. And some of this also, to be very real, is that we didn't have PPE. Okay. So like where I was at, I was really fortunate. Like we always were provided with stuff, but like N95s back in the day, before COVID, we would wear an N95 once, throw it away. So if you had TB and I was in your room, I would put the mask on, come out of your room, throw it away. Now we were in such a shortage of N95s. And again, we were lucky here in the, Illinois area, but we wear them all the time. So you wear them for a day, 2 days, get them, they reprocess them, stuff like that. But in New York and other places, I don't think they were so lucky because they were just getting hit with so much. But like a lot of those healthcare providers were getting really, really sick. And if anyone followed the news and stuff, you would hear things about a viral load. So what they're saying is that at different points of your illness, you're kind of shedding the virus differently, right? So when you come in and you're going to get like the breathing tube in, you're at like a bad point and you're very contagious. So all these healthcare providers are like right up in your business. They're getting hit with a huge viral load that's making them really, really sick. So something I kept saying to Joe that I'm curious about is like, he got it, Julia got it. Julia, I imagine, got it from him. Now she's younger also, so that plays into it. But I almost wonder if just the viral load he spread was less, and wherever he got it from, someone shed a huge viral load on him, whether it was they were just way more contagious at the time that they saw him, or if it was something like there was like saliva on your mask, or, I've been trying, me and Joe have talked about this a lot. I always kind of am really curious where he got it. Was he with somebody who was sick and he had a mask on, but they still somehow spit a particle and it went in his eye? But I just feel like that does play a role into it. And I think sometimes too, so you go to the store and people are like, maybe you get it from the store. You're going to have it less most likely than somebody that was sitting right next to somebody with really, really bad COVID, all because of the difference in the viral load. So it's basically like what someone's shedding to you.
Yeah. Well, let's look at how my household got it, right? You know, Julia got it, like you said, 2 days. Gretchen got it. And, you know, she didn't even think she was sick at first. Now, the irony with that is I lost my taste, only lost my smell for a couple of days. The weirdness for me was, and I have a really strong sense of smell. We won't really go into that, but it's a crazy sense of smell. I mean, to the point where I was worried I had brain cancer because I could smell things way better than, I feel like I'm like part werewolf or something. But
To be fair, I don't know if that's a symptom of brain cancer, by the way.
No, they because they said when you have an acute sense, so if you can like smell something really good, or you have like taste is amplified, it could be a small brain tumor because it changes the way your
all right, the way your
child works, you know.
Yeah.
But thankfully I didn't, you know. So, but I'm telling you, I'm going to sound crazy, but I think I'm onto something with this like cherry sweet smell because there came a point where like I was kind of quarantining. So like right at the beginning, I was like hardcore quarantining, and then once my fever went away, I was like, I would kind of like be around. And at this point, Gretchen was just tired of like the mass quarantine, but she smelled like cherries to me, which is what made me say to Gretchen, like, hey, you know, you kind of smell like cherries. You say you don't feel really good. You should go get a COVID test. And we fought about it for like 2 days. Gretchen's like, I'm not sick. And it actually goes to show like how little she was hit. Gretchen's a smoker, you know, she's a vegetarian. And I always say people assume vegetarians are healthy eaters. And I mean, if she listens to this podcast, she'd be so pissed at me, but I'll deal with the repercussions. But she eats like shit. Okay. I mean, like I'll be having like a piece of steak and some broccoli and some mashed potatoes for dinner. And she'll take like tortillas and pour cheddar cheese on them and Taco Bell hot sauce, and that's her dinner. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on right now? You know, I'm the guy that battles my weight. Like this, it doesn't even seem fair, you know. But anyway, so hardly got it. I mean, like hardly anything. My neighbor, it's important to say, unfortunately, I led with what happened. I gave him COVID that night. We hung out on Friday. He was sick Sunday. Here's what's crazy. He's a little older than me, but physically, if you look at him, he's in better shape than I am. Works out all the time. He's a runner. Matter of fact, this guy's pretty amazing. He told me the other day, like he could run a 4-minute and 6-second mile in college, or 4-minute 16. And to be an Olympic runner, you got to be like 4 minutes. So, and this guy still runs all the time. That's how healthy he is, which is kind of crazy too, by the way. He had a blockage. That's a whole nother conversation. But the, you know, but he gets it. And what was weird was talking about the viral load, Vic. Him and I went and picked up his son in his car together. I was in the front seat, and Cam and I had to wait. It didn't make sense to drive back, so we like sat in the parking lot and talked for an hour. So his son was in the car with us in the back seat. Son never got COVID. Cameron and I got it. Cameron was it 1 or 2 days? I actually kind of forget now. He was either 1 or 2 days behind me on my ER visit. So he ended up in the ER. Ended up on the same steroids I did. I mean, almost got it like the same, except he wasn't coughing up blood, you know? And then his ended about a week earlier than mine did, you know? But viral load. I mean, truly, I think it's
that definitely plays into it. There's actually some other like research that they're trying to do too about like blood type. I honestly haven't like read too much into that to like see like, you know, what they're saying, but like they say certain blood types might get hit worse and have it worse. And then, you know, I don't know how old Cameron's son is, but like, you think about it too, they're saying that like the younger kids do fine, right? That's why like these like college age kids are like, okay, like, I don't care that I'm going to get it because I'm going to be okay. And even like the young, like younger population, like my kids are like all school age, like when they get it, they don't do that bad. And you hear on the news occasionally about like, you know, like there was like some 16-year-old that got it that didn't do well. And there's like, you know, a couple other school age kids that they'll report that are just got really, really sick. But overall kids kind of just handle it different for whatever reason. Now it could be, you know, they're used to dealing with new strains of things because they're used to seeing it. So they just fight it different. But that's something else too that kind of plays into it. So that's something with COVID is that there's just so many things that play into it. And actually, from my point of view, I think that's what makes it the most scary, right? Like, because you don't know. Like, you don't know if I get it, how am I going to fare? Am I going to be one that's like, I lost my taste and my smell and I was fine? Or am I going to be one that ends up on the vent and ECMO machine? You don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I started saying some of my friends calling and asking about the vaccine or whatever. Here's my take on that. And everybody needs to know, Vicky and I have had some really in-depth conversations on this also. And believe it or not, she has you have a trepidatious perspective even sometimes with it, but
I mean, I can conspiracy theory things all day if people want to. I mean, I'm a pretty open-minded thinker. So I think that's some of the reason me and you have such good conversations, because you could listen to what other people have to say and walk down their path with them. And then even if you're like, I don't think so, you can still, have that. So, I mean, there are some questions I had about the vaccine, even as a healthcare provider when it first came out and things. But
here's what I said after I had COVID, and I've been telling Vicky, get the vaccine, because before I had COVID, I would have been I'm gonna wait. I'll let some other people be a guinea pig. We'll see what happens to that.
Don't worry, they made the healthcare providers guinea pigs anyway. So
I know what
you're welcome, all of you.
I mean, if the vaccine is bad, we will literally in 10 or 15 years all die of simple illnesses, and we won't have any police or paramedics
or fire or healthcare. Yeah, because we got it first.
In the corner, not being able to move, and their arms are going to fall off, and
politicians. We won't have any of those.
Well, now see that could be the good thing that comes out of all this, actually. Or at least the career ones that are 86 years old,
right,
and are still trying to make decisions for 25 and 40-year-olds. They were they were getting brought to school in a horse-drawn carriage, and they're trying to talk about climate change while they were smelling horse shit the whole way to school.
Yeah.
I don't know how that goes, but anyways, I said, we're not going to get political. But the thing about it is, except that's the one thing about politics I think we could all agree on. Get those fuckers out of there. Too old. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Everybody else retires when they're 60.
Right. But it's all these big politicians, they start when they're ready to retire. Why?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, all right. So, man, I lost my train of thought. So, but what I said was, I'm 6'4", still 275 because I gained all my weight back, and I'm going to be cutting in line. I'm going to be throwing motherfuckers out of my way so I can get to the front of the line to get my vaccine, because I am not worried about anything that's going to happen from that. Because for a month and a half of my life, it was the most ill I've ever been. About the only illness, I think, where they say, don't come around me, stay in your room. So it's there's all sorts of illnesses I've had. I've had broken arms, broken legs. I've had the stomach flu that they're okay, you're not contagious anymore, even puking, your fever's over, go about your business. And you still feel like shit, but you can do whatever you want. With COVID, it's this. You're sick. You're still coughing, stay quarantined. You're sick. You just had a fever, stay quarantined. You're confused, you might still have COVID, stay quarantined. It's a month of my life that was just stay in your room. Okay. Now, for some people, maybe that's a dream come true. They'll sit on Xbox or PlayStation all day and they'll become the best at Madden in the world, and they'll fucking make money playing Madden. I am not that guy. I'm I gotta go, man. I got places to be. I could be in Texas. Oh my God, there was just a merger with a competitor. Why didn't I get that merger? Probably because I had COVID. This can't happen anymore. I'm getting the vaccine. Getting it, no problem. You guys can track me. If you see on the podcast my ear falls off, we'll have a podcast about my ear falling off because of the vaccine. Whatever we want. But I'm getting it.
I do want to add, even if we're gonna conspiracy theory a little with the tracking, really, people, we all have cell phones and watches.
Yeah, if you're worried about tracking, throw all your devices away.
Right.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah. We have Alexa. We have everything. Really, they're tracking us. We don't need the vaccine for that.
Yeah, they probably know what we're talking about right now. I'm going to get a phone call from a 85-year-old politician explaining why he's brighter than I am, or she.
Right.
Probably if they're 85, it's probably still a he. But because that was before things have changed. But anyways, anyways, I'm going to get it. So that's the other thing I want to tell people, to put it at rest, so nobody messages me after this, like people have been doing, saying, just please tell me you're not going to get the vaccine. I'm thinking, how did you not hear I almost died? Why do you think I wouldn't get the vaccine? I mean, you bet your ass if the flu almost kills me after I've had COVID, I'll get the fucking flu shot every year too. Because if it makes me 10% more likely to live, I'm going to get it. If it makes me 1% more likely, I'll probably get it. And that's another thing. When me and Cam were both in the hospital, you know, and then I'm thinking, well, am I going to get vented? One of the things that you told me before I ever had COVID, that was the scariest thing that I don't think anybody talks about is if you got in a car accident, if you have COVID, no matter what it is, didn't you tell me like once you're on a vent, what are your odds of coming off? Isn't there a percentage?
No. I don't have a percentage, but if you have a car accident and you're on a vent, like you could come off. Like COVID's a little different though. Like,
okay.
I mean, we see people come off the ventilator. There are a lot of successful stories, but there are also a lot that aren't success stories, you know? So,
so would you say it's 50-50, 75, 25?
I don't even know if I could give it a percentage because I don't know. But there are a lot more people that don't come off the vent with COVID than like everything else. So, you know, I mean, like my normal job is a trauma ICU. So we get a lot of car accidents, gunshot wounds, falls, things like that. You know, if you were young and healthy, and even if you had lung injuries, like you'll eventually come off the ventilator. I mean, you might end up with a trach and an event rehab for a while, but, you know, COVID's a little bit different. Some of these people aren't coming off the vents ever because their lungs are so stiff that they never get better. You know, I mean, I'm sure if people follow the news, some places are starting to do double lung transplants because they're like, okay, it's, you know, it's COVID. We can't fix the lungs. You were too sick. Let's try a lung transplant and see how you do, you know? So I think COVID just messes with people worse and they don't necessarily come off the vent. They get sick and they die. And that's why COVID has so many deaths. And even though most people overcome COVID, people also die from COVID. A lot of them.
So this must have been one where Google was my enemy because I could have swore I saw something on Google that like once you're put on a vent, you basically have a like 1 in 3 people come off, like 33% chance of surviving.
So you may be right. You may be right. I have not looked into that data, so I don't want to speak, but you might be right.
See, Vicky is such a medical professional. She will not comment to anything unless she sees it. Can you imagine our world on Facebook if people actually did that? And actually looked some shit up before they comment on it. I mean, I'm going to quote the Google. And Google told me 1 in 3, you know? So if I'm wrong,
I feel 1 in 3 could be accurate.
On the other hand, I Googled where Mitch Trubinsky was going and they said he was getting traded to Kansas City and I was all pissed off and then found out that was fake. So I shouldn't have put so much trust in Google because that was also Google. Google led me way down a dark path there. I started a whole conversation about it and had to retract my statements. It was difficult, you know, but anyways, well,
I think something else, you know, like I want to get a little bit of a healthcare point across. I'm going to use your platform. Something you say about just having to be isolated to your room that I think like people need to realize that are just out there living life saying COVID's not that bad. Try being in an ICU and dying alone. So who do you get? You get me, who you've never met before you came to the hospital. That sucks pretty bad. And I think that's something that people can never understand that unless you're in that situation. So I think that nurses get it, obviously, because we're the ones there. But even if you're dying of COVID, your family still does not get to come with you. They don't. We could be like, we know they're going to die, but you still can't come. So that's something else. You know, I think I like that you touched on all those feelings with COVID because I think that's what the general public misses. But any nurse, ICU, floor, it doesn't matter. If they're working in a hospital and they're working with COVID, you're seeing some like sad stuff because it's not normal and people don't get to come and they're isolated in those rooms alone. I have to put on so much gear to get in there. So I can't even get in there as fast as normal. Everything's really different with COVID. So I think just people need to keep that in mind too, when they walk around and say, you don't need to wear a mask, even if you don't believe in it, like just kind of respect, right? Like just respect other people and wear a mask. And the mask kind of goes into that viral load. Because that's what they say, that if you have it, you're going to spread less of a viral load because the mask is going to keep it in a little.
Yeah, I was just telling a friend of mine, and he's actually a really good friend of mine. So, I mean, it is, I mean, the thing about me with my friends is everybody's entitled to their own opinion. You know,
yeah.
I'm an opinionated person, but you can have your opinion too, and I still love you. That was one of the things that I said was, you know, a mask doesn't guarantee you're not going to get it. much like maybe the vaccine won't guarantee you're not going to get it, but what it does do is makes it where it maybe you won't get it as bad, And the thing about it is, if I could have had COVID like Julia, I'd be like, hey, I'm immune now for a few months, and I was only sick for 3 days. Giddy up, let's roll. I just didn't have that response, and so there's something to be said there. And the other thing that I thought, you shared me something on Instagram, or shared something to me on Instagram, and it was, is that girl a professional? I mean, she sounded intelligent as hell.
I feel she's got to be somewhere in the healthcare field, and I almost wonder if it's some sort of, she seemed to know kind of a lot about vaccines.
Yeah.
Just if someone wants a very layman's term of how this vaccine works, also, they're putting messenger RNA that basically is teaching your body, COVID has like a crown, like the COVID bacteria. So it's teaching your body to identify that.
You said bacteria.
Yeah, the virus. The virus. It's a virus that has like a crown. So you say it's teaching your body to fight that. So yeah, you might get the vaccine and you might still get COVID, but the hope is that you will never be as bad as you would have been because your body already learned how to fight it. So your body's going to be like, oh yeah, I know how to deal with this. And it's just, that's going to be that. So, that's something else too, because I hear people a lot of time talking, being like, oh, I'm going to have my 2 vaccines and then I'm going to be immune. You're teaching your body how to fight COVID. So let's everyone, that wants to get vaccinated. But we it's like,
it's like keeping you, it's like saying you might still get COVID, but the chances of you dying from it are less.
Yes.
And I think that's
you might not even have symptoms. You might have developed such a strong immune response with the vaccine that you come in contact with COVID and you do fine. But, I think people sometimes are like, well, it's only 95% effective. Well, it's because it's just teaching your body, and it's still the way your body's going to react. But, maybe you're not going to be the one. Even let's say if Joe had the vaccine, maybe if he got it again, he would get it like Julia had it. So that's kind of some of it too.
I'd be ecstatic.
Right.
If I got COVID again and just got that, I'd be like, woo, winning,
So the hope is that even if the COVID vaccine still has COVID, at least then you're maybe not going to get it as bad. So if you even think about it that way, at least maybe you won't end up as sick as Joe or as sick as people I see in the hospital on a ventilator alone.
Well, this is why I asked if that girl is a professional, because she was talking about stuff that sounded so over my head, but she could have been speaking in Greek and I wouldn't have known any better. But the one thing she said that didn't sound like Greek to me that made the best sense, and I wanted to kind of paraphrase it, is she was like, and for all you young people that are coming on my social media and telling me I'm an idiot and hating on me, here's what I can tell you. History shows, for all you young people that push shit off and say it's not going to affect me because I'm young and healthy, nothing ever good comes of this, because one thing that does catch up is time. And one day you'll be in your 40s or 50s or 60s or 70s and COVID's going to fucking kill you. So stop hating on the people that don't want to get COVID, because you're one of the people that it doesn't make a difference. And when she said that, I literally was like, I wish I could actually send this girl a message, because I'm not an Instagram person. You just shared it with me, and tell her, hell yes. That's actually how I feel now, because it's important to say that I was actually kind of one of those assholes, because I was like, I'm 41. I play volleyball 4 nights a week.
So
I feel like I could lift a car if I had to, if you got trapped under. That's the way my mentality is.
But you were respectful. You were in my house one day and Mom and Dad were here and you kept your mask on. So I think, even though, you were out and still doing things, you weren't just being a total oh, well, I don't care about anyone, and I think that's, I think that's who she was trying to get at. Those people that are young and are I don't care because I'm fine. But you might have been living your life, but you weren't just reckless with it all.
Yeah. Well, that's important to say. And I still am living my life. Next week I have to go to Texas, and I'm going to go to Texas. You might be mad at me, or might be upset that I'm going, but I have to, I'm going to go and I'll take the precautions. So the big thing for me is I tell everybody, I don't expect anybody to not live your life. One of the worst things about COVID is being quarantined and not living my life. So why would I recommend to anybody to not live your life? But the recommendation is, realize that even if you get the vaccine and you have a reaction, or, you know, you wear a mask and it makes your face break out a little. I mean, these are all things that I hear. At the end of the day, those are all things that are much better than the alternative. And I see myself, like I said, is lucky, you know, because I think that, you know, like you had said, Vic, like we were 2 days ahead of it, right? 2 days later, I might have been gone. And there was somebody that I knew on Facebook that got COVID when I did, and she died. You know, she was in the hospital, and all of her messages looked exactly the same. You know, this friend of mine that I played volleyball with, she was sharing. She was it was one of her close friends, and you know, the messages were the same. People being like, "You're strong, you've got this," and the girl messaging back being like, "Yeah, I've got this. I'll be okay. I'll see you soon." And all of a sudden, that's it. You know, you get the message on Facebook that she didn't make it. She was gone. You know, so she went from sending somebody text messages saying she'll be okay to not being around, which tells me she didn't even make it to the event. Like all of a sudden she went from being okay to one day not, and lights out, you know?
Yeah.
So anyways, well, I think that pretty much loops us through. Chris, did I miss anything? I think I covered it all. Chris's whole point was going to be to make sure that I didn't miss anything from our conversation, and I covered everything I wanted to get out. So Chris, what do you think? Did I hit it in one take or what?
Yeah, you nailed it. That was great. I am still curious how you think you got it. Like it sounds like.
So I think it was that mask.
Like a warrior mask, or
I think I wore somebody's mask.
Oh, really?
I think I wore someone else's mask. Okay, so here, this is my thought, and this is what happens with these people that get it that are asymptomatic, because I think there was like no harm or foul. So I keep a pack of 50 masks in my truck all the time because I'm in and out of places, and you know, sometimes I'll pull up someplace. I can't tell you how many places I pull up to, talking about my sister saying how safe I am with it. I'll pull up to places and I put on my mask, and somebody be like, "Oh, I don't have a mask. I'll just stay 6 feet away." And I'm like, "I have a mask," and I'll like hand them a mask out of my truck and be like, "Put the fucking mask on," because I can't afford to be sick, you know. And I have a lot of friends that think that's the dumbest thing ever because they think it's dumb I wear a mask. But whatever, that's just opinions. That's their opinion. That's my opinion. So I think this is my theory, but I can't prove it. So it's important for me to say this. This is a theory. And honestly, this is after days of my sister and I trying to like contact trace. So it's important to know we contact trace at Langton Group. Okay. And we've taken steps so far as to even we made like where we have Chris, actually, I should show you this one day. And Vicky, you'd be even intrigued. You know, so we have an 86 truck fleet. Okay. So imagine 86 keys hanging up for your employees. And we decided, okay, we can't be having people coming into the shop because everybody touching doorknobs and stuff. So before like a snow event right now, we carry, it looks like a suitcase of keys, and it gets clipped onto a board that has lights on it so that the people never have to come inside, and it's plexiglass, and we open it and we disinfect. I mean, it's crazy. The precautions we're taking to keep my people safe. So we also contact trace. Like Megan's whole job is if one of our employees gets COVID, figure out who they were around, who they were with, who they think they got it from, to see if it was one of our employees or right. So we have all this in place at Langton Group. So when I got COVID, of course, everybody's like, "Well, who were you with that day? Did one of our employees give it to you?" So me, Julie, and Stefan go to a large customer, a potential client of ours in Michigan. No, we contact trace that, nothing's there. Then I have a meeting on Tuesday with a very large customer of mine. I end up getting sick. Instantly, my office sends them an email. "Do you have anybody that's sick?" The irony is that this is the only one weird spot. We both seem to get it the same day. Okay. So both one of the people that was in the meeting and myself, say Friday night, Saturday, running fever, symptomatic. So then it's like, the chicken or the egg. Did they get it from me or did I get it from them? Okay. And then the truck comes back to me on a Wednesday. The only thing that makes sense to me is that, because it's, you know, I mean, you have to understand, like, not only do I wear a mask, I have hand sanitizer in my truck. So If I go to a gas station, I sanitize my hands. If I walk into a building, when I get back out to my truck, I sanitize my hands. To the point where, by the way, I think I'm gonna need a new steering wheel because that shit like eats your steering wheel. I mean, it like melts. But anyways, so
I think that's going to be another COVID long-term side effect, right? Instead of being on humans, people are going to need steering wheels replaced and stuff like that from all the hand gel.
I was thinking like I'm going to look up all the companies that make steering wheels because I'm sure nobody makes a steering wheel anymore. They outsource it, and I'm going to buy some stock in it because this is like an insider tip. Like people are going to have to replace their steering wheels. But anyways, so that's it. I mean, Chris, that's like what I think it is because, you know, that company that does our service, you know, it's like young porters, and I could totally see them being asymptomatic, you know, not even feeling like they're sick. They drive my truck back. They get in the truck. They need a mask. There's a mask sitting right there in a box. They take the mask out. They wear the mask on the drive back because like these guys always pull up with masks on because the service center probably tells them you're in somebody's truck, just wear a mask. Like that's, you know, so, and then I could totally see him like pulling into our yard, figuring out where he's supposed to park it, taking his mask off. And chances are probably putting one of my old masks on because I always leave a mask on my dash, and then me getting in the truck and taking his. It's the one thing that makes most logical sense. The reason I say it's a theory is nobody seemed to want to like, that was one of those weird scenarios where the relationship there is so good. Nobody wanted to call and be like, did one of your porters have COVID because Joe has COVID? And we think, cause then it's like, then it'd be like, I got an idea. We're not going to drive your trucks back and forth anymore. You know what I'm saying? So then then I was like, well, I have it. So screw it. So that's why it's like a theory. And the only thing is the timeline kind of works out because, you know, that was Wednesday. I was sick Friday. Cameron and I were together. He was sick Sunday. His wife, Roxanne, was sick Sunday. So it's like, it almost seems like the strain we had or whatever with the way COVID was hitting us, if I was around somebody 2.5 days later, they were sick. So then I look at it like whatever happened Wednesday is like how somebody got sick. And I can't contact trace any place I was Wednesday except for that mask. That's why my theory is my theory, Chris. And because it smelled like cherries. Like,
yeah,
you know, so.
I mean, and that would explain like a really large viral load as well, right?
Yeah. Did you ever figure out, Vic? Remember, I asked you if you guys smell cherry when you're around people.
So this is something that's just totally non-medical at all. Just me and Joe having a conversation. But Joe kept saying he smelled cherries the whole time he was sick. He'd be like, "My room smells like cherries. My room smells like cherries." Now, something that I think is funny about this is that, you know, obviously when I'm taking care of COVID patients, I'm in a room and we have an N95, and I always feel like these N95s smell like Smarties, which could kind of be like fruity cherry, right? So we kind of are like, we almost wonder if COVID smells a little like cherries. And maybe that's what I'm smelling in my N95 and not necessarily the N95. But that's just something Joe picked up on, that he felt like when he was sick, it smelled like cherries.
Well,
and that's why he's saying this mask smelled like cherries, like almost like whoever had the mask on had COVID. He smelled it, but didn't even know what he was smelling. It was like, whatever. And, you know,
yeah, because it's like ingrained in my brain now.
Certain things smell like certain things, right? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, like it could be, you know, it could be that it kind of has like a cherry or like a fruity smell. I mean, that's definitely possible.
Yeah. So, I mean, Julia's room smelled like it when I would walk into her room. My room definitely smelled like it. Like if I walked out of my room, Chris, okay, like, because see, one of the things that we realized that I kind of had my doctor kind of put me like back in quarantine was, you know, so the CDC calls me and says, your quarantine's over. You can come out of your room. So I did come out of my room because, you know, and my fever, I didn't have fever for 72 hours, whatever. But I'm still coughing really bad. My lungs hurt, you know, and my doctor at this point is like calling to check up on me. And he calls and, you know, he sees that I'm sitting out in the kitchen and I'm not up in my room. And he's like, why are you out of quarantine? I'm like, because they said I'm done. And he's like, you're still symptomatic. You're not done in quarantine. Go get back in your room. And, you know, but what I noticed was in that time, like if I walk out of there and like go into the kitchen, then I'd come out of the kitchen, go back out to my room, and it smelled. So what I said, it smelled like if you make cherry Kool-Aid in the powder. Doesn't smell like the Kool-Aid. It smells like the powder, and with a little apple. Like, so it's like cherry with a little apple. Now, this is coming from the guy that if you and I ever go on a road trip together, I will smell a dead raccoon a mile away. You'll be like, I don't smell anything. And then all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, there's 2 dead raccoons there. Like, that's the way that it is. I went on a vacation. We were in Costa Rica, and I'm sitting there, and there was a big earthquake, by the way. That could be a whole nother podcast, but it wouldn't be related to this. But anyways, I smell sulfur. And I keep telling people, like, I smell sulfur. And everybody's like, they're kind of being assholes. Like, oh, did you fart? Ha ha. And I'm like, no, it smells like sulfur. Well, turns out there was a volcano on the other side of the mountain that erupted. There were 6 inches of ash. I'm the only person in this wedding party that keeps saying, I smell sulfur. Everybody else, like, I don't smell anything. So that's the way my nose is. Like, and my sister knows this. I mean, my sister and I are very close. Like, I can smell things that just other people can't. I mean, I walked in my house yesterday and I'm like, it smells like shit in here. And everybody's like, what's the problem? And I walked down to my basement in the ejection pit for my son's bathroom downstairs was backed up and not working. But I'm the only person in the house. I literally sniffed it out like a bloodhound. I was like, walked around. I'm like, it's not up here. Walked down the stairs. I was like, oh, there it is. So anyways, so I think this is why
Joe,
think I'm onto something with the
maybe
code.
they were all just saving it for you.
Well,
it's the oldest trick in the book.
$875 later, Vic, you'd be proud of me. I opened up. So my house is 3 levels, but there's a crawl space. So it's really like my house is 3.5 stories. And I opened up the hatch for the crawl space and I saw the sewage, and I thought, there is no effing way, after I know my white blood cells are shit, that I'm climbing in that. I'm calling somebody. And it's the first time in my life. I mean, because I've replaced ejection pits and hot water heaters. I was like, all right, I'm just going to pay somebody. And even though I would have actually probably paid them. I mean, they charged me $875. I would have paid them $8,075 after I opened up that hatch and saw what was down there. But they did it, So
some things are definitely well worth the money.
Oh my God. Then the irony was I asked them how much for a hot water heater and they said $1,500. And I was like, holy shit. See, the hot water heater, I don't really understand for $1,500, but you could have told me $1,500 for the pile of shit that you had to climb in to get the pump out. It was money well spent, so, but anyways.
Joe, I think you might be part Wolverine, part Logan. So
I don't know. We've actually said that. Sometimes my nails grow so fast. I think I am too. My fiance is always like, why? Because she's always like doing like press on nails and stuff. She's like, if my nails could grow like yours, because seriously, my nails. I don't know about you guys. This is the weirdest, most abstract thing we're off on. Maybe you'll edit this out too, or maybe you'll leave it as a blooper. But I literally have to like cut my fingernails like every 4 days. That's how fast my fingernails grow. It's crazy.
It's because you're well nourished. Gretchen needs to eat a little more like you, not just those quesadillas with hot sauce.
Well, my waistline shows how well nourished I am too.
Yeah, me too.
So maybe I need to be less nourished. So maybe this is what I need as an indicator. Like, how often should one cut their nails? And then once I get my nails to that, I'll just be a healthy weight. That's maybe what I need.
And you'll know.
That'll be
you
my
won't be checking your weight. It'll be by nail.
I won't use a scale anymore. I'll go off how fast my fingernails grow.
Yeah.
So,
Victoria, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So my kind of meddling on Google, like Joe, it seems the one through line I've found is that like low vitamin D kind of denotes like a more severe response to COVID. Have you noticed anything like that or any other?
So that was it was an early study that was actually published by Northwestern. And they are definitely saying vitamin D. And actually, when Joe told me he was sick, I was like, you need vitamin C and vitamin D, because they do say that if you have low levels of vitamin D, it is like they want to say almost like a predictor that you're going to have COVID worse. So I'm not sure why it makes it worse. I almost wonder if it's just the way it like binds to your cells or something. But actually vitamin D is linked to a lot of things. Low levels of vitamin D makes you more at risk for different cancers and things like that too. So, but yeah, that definitely is something that's out there, and I think getting more and more well known.
What about zinc too? Didn't you?
Yeah. So zinc. Now I haven't gone and fact searched this myself too, but one of my friends was telling me that the zinc actually helps kind of with that crown that I was talking about on the virus, because it doesn't let it like bind as well. So like they say, like, you know, to take like vitamin C, zinc, and then I like the vitamin D. So I know I wasn't that like big on the zinc because I wasn't that like well versed in it, but I know, didn't you, your doctor had told you should be on zinc?
So my doctor told me to start taking zinc, and I will say in the beginning I only took C and D because we had that in the house, and being quarantined, having me, Gretchen, and Julia get it, nobody. I think it's one of the boys, but that, you know, I didn't. But once, what ended up happening was my neighbor went and bought me the zinc and was like, "Stop being dumb, take the zinc." And within like 4 days, I mean, seriously, he was like, "Why are you so effing stubborn? Like, the doctor told you to take zinc. Your sister, just go buy zinc." And I'm like, I'm almost over it now anyway. So maybe this is why I was sick so long too.
Oh yeah, but that does go to show. It goes back to that original where you say you never go to the doctor. It's because you're stubborn. Because it's the same thing too. All the texts. I mean, if we go back through our text chain, I mean, how many days were you like, I think I'm coming out of this? I mean, there were a lot, because you always thought you were going to get better. So I think then that is why you were like, I don't need the zinc, I'm going to get better. But you didn't get better as fast as you thought or hoped.
I mean, it's important to know part of my success is because I just don't lose, and I am not used to losing. Like I, even if it looks like I'm losing one day, I like literally figure out how I come back the next day and like rock that, and I just like take care of it. So yeah, illness for me is bad because I'm always in my mind. One of the things that's funny is I would, every night before I'd go to bed, I would like give my immune system a pep talk. I would be like, "All right, immune system." Like, this is seriously, this is like this is like an internal monologue of me before I go to bed every night. When I was spiking this fever, I'd be like, "All right, immune system, I'm going to sleep. When I wake up tomorrow morning, you'd better have taken care of this shit." Okay. Like, and I would just keep on thinking this thought. Okay. This is what I do when I get sick, because I'm like, I don't know, isn't that like Buddhist or something? I'm not that religion, but I feel like I'm like that mind over matter person where I'm like, I'm going to will it. I'm going to make this happen. And I think it's one of the things that made COVID worse, because I wake up the next morning and be like, I fucking lost again. Like what is happening? Get it together. I was so pissed off, you know? So.
You're giving your immune system some tough love there.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I mean, if I had to give my immune system a grade, I give it a D-. I mean, it got
nah. You're still here. You didn't end up in the hospital. You didn't end up on an event. You gotta be a little bit better than a D-.
I don't know. I felt like it was kind of a piss poor for performance but you know, I guess.
Well, you know, Dave always says, my husband, but Dave always says C's get degrees. So maybe it was just a C. You just got your degree.
All right, I'll give it a C. I mean, I was a C student. That's one of the things I always laugh at is, you know, A students teach, B students work for C students, you know, and that's something that I'm a firm believer of, because I think I've got a ton of B students. They're all the people that kept Langton going while I was sick as hell, you know. But so what that means is I need my immune system to at least be a B on the next round. You know? So.
Victoria, so just out of curiosity, like, you know, if two people show up the same day with kind of similar symptoms, similar body types, do you notice that, like, if one does one thing, then they do better, or if, you know, one has kind of pre-existing anything, like, is there
some pre-existing will kind of like mess with people, but I think one of the scariest things about COVID for like me, I mean, like, I just turned 40, so fairly young still, you know, but is that it's just so like right smack in your face. It doesn't matter age, like, it does kind of matter race. We are seeing that African Americans and Hispanics get hit harder for whatever reason. So maybe genetics, something like that. But there are some things you could do. Like what I told Joe right away to do was, you know, keep hydrated, keep moving, because so anytime you might have pneumonia, like even if it's like a post-surgical, like you want to always make sure your lungs are expanding. So moving is good for you. Also with clots, moving is good for you because the more you lay around, you're likely to get a blood clot in your leg that then could travel. So I think like if you get COVID, start taking your vitamins. So zinc, vitamin D, vitamin C. Always make sure you're kind of just like staying hydrated because the fever is going to dehydrate you. It makes your heart rate go up and it increases your metabolic rate. So you're kind of like losing. And then, think about it, you get sweaty. That's like a fluid loss. We tell people to lay on their stomach. I don't think Joe did this because he said it was uncomfortable, but when you lay on your stomach, you're letting your lungs expand better. Even people on ventilators, we're doing that. It's called proning. And then I just think even though you feel miserable, like move. So if it means you're walking around your room every once in a while, do it because it's going to help so you don't get that blood clot and so that you just are kind of up in a different position and your lungs are just able to expand.
So I did roll over to my stomach every now and then because I knew what you told me. Unfortunately for me, when I lay on my stomach, it hurts my lower back. And when you have COVID, everything that hurts a little bit when you're healthy hurts really bad when you're not. So yeah, that was kind of hard for me, but I did try to do it. I did walk around, like you said, which that had me like trying to invent a bodysuit that you could like be suspended in, and the suit would exercise you because that's how weak I was. So then this kind of shows like the way my mind works, Chris, is I'm laying in bed thinking, oh my God, Vicky wants me to walk around and do all this shit. I'm too weak, but maybe what I need to do is figure out how to invent a suit, and we'll call it the COVID suit. And when people come in, instead of laying them in a bed, they put them in this like suspended suit that like pulsates and like works your legs so your blood flows and keeps you at a perfect internal temperature. So that if you spike a fever, it actually, you don't need to take any ibuprofen. I mean, I'm laying there trying to think of all this stuff.
So there are some equipment that does those things. There's compression devices that go on your legs, and there's different cooling blankets. Unfortunately,
I know, but you're all laying down. So the way my brain worked is any sci-fi movie you ever watch. I was watching Independence Day the other day, and I was like, see, this is exactly what I was saying. The dead aliens are floating in like this viscous fluid in this like glass case. And I'm like, see, why don't we have something like gel like that? And you modulate the temperature, and the only thing sticking out is your head. And that's it. It's like an aloe vera, like gel, and it's like perfect temperature, and you're sitting up. Anyways.
Isn't that what they did to Luke Skywalker when they found him in the snow?
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. Every sci-fi movie, like everybody's had this freaking idea. Nobody's made the damn suit. Where is the chamber? That's what I want to know. Who is going to do it? Somebody step up with me. Give me some money for R&D and let's make one, And with all this virtual reality stuff going on right now, the sky's the limit. I mean, you can sell these things in medical. Boy, oh boy, people would never leave their house, And that's why we'd call it the COVID suit, make quarantine better. So.
Less lonely, virtual friends.
Yeah, exactly. So,
cool. Well, Joe, one last question for you. So they said your lungs are still feeling rough. What is there some sort of protocol for like getting your lungs back into shape or what?
Yeah. So, all they did was gave me, here's my inhaler sitting right here. They gave me, supposed to be taking the inhaler, which I should have probably taken it when I started coughing a while ago. They didn't really give me like a protocol. What they've just been telling me is to expect like the pain from when they did the x-ray, I think my last x-ray was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think. But they told me it'd probably be 2 months of still having lung pain. And then, but they told me they wanted me to come back in a month to check on it again and see like how my lung healed. So there was really no protocol. One of the things that I've been trying to do is just slowly become active again. So I like rework my lungs because that's the thing. And Vicky, maybe you comment a little bit on this. So I've never had pneumonia before. And you'll get out of breath to go get the mail. It's like crazy. Like I can sit here and feel fine. And then I start to do anything strenuous and I'll run out of breath. I put my plow on my truck the other day and my brother was like, easy, big dog. Cause I was like, you would have thought I ran 1.5 miles. I just, right. That's like, right, Vic. It's like,
yeah,
it's like you function and then you push it and then you can't breathe.
Yeah. I could speak from personal experience on this because I had pneumonia after a C-section. They were saying it was like, I had like almost like a hospital acquired after surgery. And it was pretty bad, but they didn't admit me. They gave me like IV dose of meds and then sent me home because I had a newborn. But that was, my son is.
Victoria, last question for you. During this whole experience, like, how worried were you about Joe?
I mean, I was pretty worried. I checked in on him every day. I never really felt like he was going to die, but I think I like knew how sick he could possibly get. Mm-hmm. And if he got sicker, like, would he make it over that like threshold and would he be okay? So, I mean, I definitely was worried about him, but I'm glad it turned around and worked out as it did. And he didn't even get admitted and stuff like that. But, I mean, yeah, there were some days there that, I was nervous how it was going to be. Like I said, we always see people that just are okay. And then they're not. And that was kind of that morning that I told him to go to the emergency room. That's what I was worried was going to start to happen. His oxygen levels were lower. He felt like crap. He couldn't take a deep breath. And I was worried we were going to hit that point where he just was not going to be able to catch his breath and he was going to be in a bad way. So I think especially at that point, I was pretty worried about him.
Well, plus that one day, remember my heart rate was like 45 or something. You were all,
his heart was kind of doing some weird things. He was explaining like almost like he was having these thumps, which I imagine are some sort of like palpitations. And then his heart rate would sometimes be fast, but like you could kind of expect that when somebody had a fever and stuff like that. But then he would kind of go extreme. He'd be like in the 40s sometimes and then be like back fast again. So I think his heart was definitely doing some weird things too, which I'm going to reiterate, you still have to call your doctor and get more testing done on that. Because I mean, the long-term effects of COVID are real, and I will be curious, just, like they are showing things are happening with the heart. So it's like, I want to just make sure that your heart's okay after COVID. So got to listen to me on that. I'll keep writing you. Yeah.
To elaborate on what she said is, and I've been telling my doctor this every time I call, and it's actually been bothering me because it keeps getting like it's almost like dismissed every time I bring it up, and this has never happened to me before. So I got COVID a few days into COVID. Remember I called you, and what would happen is my heart, it's like beats normal, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. And then all of a sudden it goes, whoop. We lost Vicky again. It's just like this one like crazy beat. So it kind of felt like my chest was hollow. So then Vicky was like, well, take your pulse and see if you feel it in your vein. Well, then I would feel my vein go like, boom, with my heart. So, and it got to the point where it's predictable, almost like 4 to 6 times a minute, my heart would do that, like, boom, like, and what I have found, Vicky, is it does it more when I lay down. So if I'm laying on my back, it does it. If I'm sitting upright, it does not. So then I'm telling my doctor, and they're like, yeah, it's kind of normal. You're dehydrated and you have pneumonia, and your heart's doing whatever it takes to get your oxygen. Mm-hmm. But then what started to happen was I'd have that pulse ox reader, which, by the way, when you have bad COVID, the pulse ox reader beeps at 93. And it is kind of scary because Vicky said she was never worried I was going to die. For 2 days, I was worried I was kicking the can, like we were done. Because you put on the pulse ox reader and it's like beep, beep. I mean, the thing's not even on your finger for 3 seconds. It's already beeping. You're like, holy fuck, So, it's like 90, 92, and it's like, okay, I know. What did you say the threshold is that before they put you on oxygen?
Well, so in normal worlds, like 92, you want to be 92 or higher. COVID, we let people go sometimes in the upper 80s, depending on how they're feeling. So COVID's just a little bit different, but, there are some people that are in the 50s when they walk into the ER and they have COVID. But I recommend a little home pulse ox if you do get sick, because then you kind of know. Like, that was actually something that I think made me less scared for Joe, because I knew what his stats were. So even when he was telling me I can't breathe, my lungs hurt, I was like, yeah, but your stats are okay. So like, you were still oxygenating, So I know 93 was the day that I was like, I think you need to go to the ER, but I still was like, oh, you're okay still, like, yeah, you're still okay with COVID in 93.
Yeah. So, but one day I do the pulse ox, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Vic, but I'm like, it's like 95. But my heart rate's 45, and I read it to my sister, and she's like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, 95, 45. And she's like, and Oh, I think we lost her again. But anyways, she's like, yeah, that's not good. Your heart rate should not be at 45 right now. You have COVID, you have pneumonia. If anything, your heart would be pumping faster. So then she puts the fear of God in me about that. But the irony was she gave me great medical advice. She's like, listen, you can do something that my patients normally can't do. Get up and walk around and get your heart rate up. So there was like a couple of days where that's what we did together, where it's like I would call her and it'd be low, and then I would get up and just walk around, but it would respond like instantly. So it's almost like my heart was just tired. Like this way, this is not medical. It's just my thoughts. And it'd just be like, all right, I'm taking a break. Like that's how it felt to me, But so anyways, that was that,
Yeah.
So, and it still does it. So it's still doing it right now. I mean, it hasn't done it for
Wow.
this whole podcast, but it still does it if I lay on my back. So,
Yeah. Well, I think I speak for myself and the audience when we want to also encourage you to get that checked out.
yeah.
Hate to lose you at this point, especially. Joe.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know it's hard because you start to kind of feel like, I don't know. It's like when she tells me to do that or whatever, it's like, I mean, I'm a stubborn person, but I'm also like not like a hypochondriac. And it's important for people to know that as I'm talking about my experience, like I'm somebody that'll pick food up off the ground and eat it. It's like whatever,
Strengthens your immune system.
Exactly. I mean, some people say 3-second rule. I've got like a 10-second rule. And if it's like something really good, I'm just eating it anyways, But yeah, so it's hard for me to go to the doctor because I almost feel like now, I don't know. It's weird. I feel like maybe it's time I maybe just get a different doctor because when I call and talk about it, it's like I get this feeling like they almost are thinking I'm like a hypochondriac, where it's like, yeah, you had COVID, you're going to have effects for a while, get used to it, So I've got my sister on one end being like, yeah, you could have a clot inside your heart. And they'll just sit in there, and that's why your heart will do like weird stuff. Yeah, that's why that's the test she wants me to get. She wants them to do echo of my heart, because see, when I go in and they do all that stuff, they like scanned to see if I had clots in my lung, in my artery, and checking my legs and stuff like that. But when she looked at my reports, she was like, they've never done an echo of your heart. Like make them do an echo of your heart, because they did EKGs, had me on the things, to obviously check rhythm. And what was weird was that would show on, like that weird rhythm would show. They even said when I was in the ER, like, are you feeling like a heart, like palpitation? And I said, yeah. And they're like, okay, but anyway, so yeah, so I do need to listen to my sister and go get the test, I suppose. So
You do. I'm back on. And yes, you do.
Yeah. So, yeah, cool. I mean, so I don't know. I got any other questions, Chris? Or
yeah, I think that's everything. What are your kind of parting thoughts for folks who think this isn't a big deal or think this is too big of a deal, or what's your your review?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Parting thoughts.
So here's my parting thoughts. For those that don't think it's a big deal, I don't fault you for thinking it, because I didn't really think it was a big deal until it was a big deal, right? I think I've been telling people that if I had to give an analogy to COVID's kind of like a heart attack, so it's like everybody gets nervous. They might have a heart attack one day. And doctors tell people to eat better and exercise more and don't have cholesterol or don't eat sugar. And people are always like, yeah, but I'm good and I'm fine and I'm not going to get sick, right? Like that, I feel like if I had to compare anything to me, like that's me, right? Because I'm 275 pounds and I should probably be 240, So I'm that person. Like I could die of a heart attack one day. I have stress, this and that, but I push it aside. I feel like that's COVID. But once you get it, once you have it, it's like you've had that massive heart attack that you survived. So once you have it, you eat healthier and you do listen to your doctor. The problem is it was like almost too little too late, because now your heart is scarred. You've already had a heart attack. All the insurance companies know you've had a heart attack. So now you got pre-existing shit with that. Life insurance companies know you've had a heart attack. So I think the problem, like my advice or my opinion is, we look at COVID for its face value. Okay. Which is, I think, the mistake the majority of us make. It's, if I get COVID, how sick am I going to get and when will I be better? That's how I would have thought of it. Now I think of it as, is my lung function going to be right again? Now I think of it as, and I know how I felt when I had COVID. How many other people did I get sick? Okay. Did I just get one of my best friends so sick that he might not be able to get his heart surgery that he needed? Which, by the way, he did get successful. He's good now. Okay. After COVID. These are all the things that I just want people to take into consideration with COVID. And I'm not telling anybody that you shouldn't live your life, because I got it living my life and I'm going to continue to live my life. I just want people to know that, the whole making fun of people that are wearing masks inside a vehicle, I would feel like I let that, I couldn't care less if somebody said that before I had COVID. Now it offends me. When I hear people say, you're a sheep if you get a vaccine, before I had COVID, I would have been like, everybody's entitled to their opinion. Now it pisses me off because now I don't want to get COVID again in 4 months. Because if I get COVID again in 4 months, like I got it now, maybe I am done. Because now, like I said, COVID is my pre-existing condition, So my advice to anybody would be, think of all the people around you. Think of all the life you think at this moment when you listen to this podcast that you have to live, and realize that the time it takes you to put on a mask or the time it takes you to wash your hands is a really small price to pay. The other thing that I want to say is, when I was in the ER, there was probably 5 or 6 different nurses that had to come in that room. And I couldn't imagine why any of them would come in that room. I knew I was sick. They knew I had COVID. Okay. If I knew you had COVID right now, Chris, I'd be like, see you later, buddy. We're good. Right. And these people, like my sister, they come into that room. All those people have family, friends, and kids, and they walk in to treat you. And in the ER, they're walking in with the same freaking masks we wear every day. And one of the things that I'll remember was, I said to the nurse that was there, she was a pretty young woman. And I said, and I coughed, and I turned my head, and I like to cough away from her. And she appreciated that, and I was like, I don't even know why you're in this room, because I feel like I'm like a walking plague right now. And she's like, well, first of all, I've already had it. I did have COVID. It was terrible. I got it pretty bad. She was like, but if I don't walk into the room, who's going to walk in? Okay. That's something else I want people to understand about COVID is, when you get it, like I got it, and you have to go to the hospital, everybody assumes that all of these medical professionals are just going to keep walking into the room. Okay. But what happens if some of these medical professionals that had it get it again and they die from it? Okay. Now, fortunately, we have the vaccines now for them. Okay. But I just want people to be a little less selfish. That's what I want to say. Don't be selfish. Think about the greater good, and think about the fact that once we're through this, we're through it. It's just back to normal. And I am thankful for the vaccine. And one of the things that I heard with the vaccine too, that I think needs to be said out loud. Everybody questions how fast this vaccine was developed. And my sister, Vicky, actually helped me through this. This is one of the first vaccines that have been developed that the world developed. Okay. We are 7 billion people on this planet now, right? I think that's right. 7 billion we have. And what's crazy about this vaccine is it's one of the few times 7 billion people are all fighting for the same end cause. No more COVID. Okay. It doesn't make a difference what side of politics you're on. If COVID goes away, business is open, we're working, you can party again, you can do whatever you want. All these poor small restaurants and small businesses that are getting decimated, which I feel terrible for, it's all done. Okay. So let's just get it done. Let's be done. It's not going to be done forever. Like Vicky said, we can still get COVID, but we don't have to worry about a loved one dying. We don't have to worry about if Joe's going to be around anymore. We don't have to worry about Chris being around. There's still things that could take us, but it's one less thing that could take us. That's it. That's my closing thing. We could all die of something tomorrow, but maybe we can get it to a point where we don't have to worry about it being COVID that takes us. It's just one less thing. That's my thought process now with COVID.
Yeah. Love it. Amen.
All right. So
Well said.
So yeah, that's it. I think I don't want to over talk it at all. And I feel like I did on this one, but this meant to anybody that listened to the entire podcast for me, I appreciate it because I appreciate every person that helped me through it. I appreciate every person that listened to how I felt about it. Because, it was pretty messed up. It was very humbling. Made me realize that it doesn't make a difference how big and how strong you are, how young you are, how tough you are. COVID doesn't give a shit. All COVID is after are your cells. You are just a host for COVID, and it's going to do what it's going to do to you and there's nothing you're going to do about it. Right? I mean, that's it. Like
Yep.
once it takes hold, you can't will it away. You can't medicate it away. It's a virus. It's just going to be, does your immune system win or does COVID win? And that's really what it comes down to. It comes down to a living cell versus a living virus.
Yep.
And go. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing this. I mean, this was an adventure, man. It's a journey.
Yeah, it was. Like I said, I've actually said having so many employees and so many people that I could affect, maybe God gave me a bad case of it for a reason, and I survived it for a reason, so that I can, tell people like, hey, it's real. It was real bad. I think I said to you, Chris, I think I'm usually the guy that people call if they had to go to war. There was a backstreet brawl or a back alley brawl, I think I'd be probably high on the list. Be like, I'm going to call my buddy Joe, right? I mean, Vicky knows that. I mean, I'm like the family protector. I mean,
Big Brother Joe. Even my
Yeah.
friends would call him that when we were young. Let's call
Yeah.
Big Brother Joe, they'd say.
yeah, but so I mean, Big Brother Joe didn't have shit on COVID,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so
That's serious. Well, thanks again for sharing, man. That really, I think opened my eyes, opened my mind, kind of scared me straight, I'd say.
Yeah. And whatever it does, it's genuine. It's true. This was just my journey. People have had it much, much worse. I'm sure there's a lot of things that people deal with in their life that's probably worse than my COVID experience. But to me, it was the worst thing I've ever dealt with.
Well, it sounds like 400,000 people have had it worse than you, and they died.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah.
Yeah. It's terrible to think about it. Actually, I know I said I was done, but one of the things that I said to Vicky was that when I had COVID, it actually made me feel bad for all those people, because I feel like the people, so before I had COVID, and I think it has nothing to do with my COVID, I think people still fall into this trap. They hear somebody died of COVID and then they're like, oh, they must have had something else going on. What was their pre-existing condition? And I know that because it's happened to me. Some of the people that found out, so I made sure to not put it on my Facebook, but my fiance put it on hers. And then people that found out that I had it were messaging me saying, I didn't know you were that unhealthy. And it pissed me off. And it actually is like, the professional in me didn't get pissed and say like shitty stuff back. And I just gave them the facts of like, yeah, I don't have pre-existing conditions. One of the things that I told my sister saw it, my blood pressure was 122/80 while I was in the ER, and the ER doctor laughed a little bit and said, probably the reason you're not on the vent is you're in the ER, not able to breathe, and your blood pressure is 122/80. Right. So I am a healthy person. But when people say that, it's totally unfair. And I also think it's unfair to maybe, I don't know, Vicky, would you say half maybe of the 400,000 people at a minimum that have died of COVID that had no pre-existing condition? And then going even a little step further to that, what I realized having COVID was, diabetes is manageable now. In our medical world, you can be a diabetic and live a healthy life with management, right? They manage it. You can have high cholesterol and take a cholesterol medication and it's managed. So you can have all sorts of pre-existing things that you can live and survive through until you get COVID. So at the end of the day, I was one of those people. It's important to know. I can remember an argument I would have with my dad being like, yeah, Dad, people are dying of COVID, but they have pre-existing conditions. Okay. I was that asshole. I'll openly admit it. Like, sometimes you got to just step up and own your misconstrued thought. But then having it, and now I almost feel bad and guilty for ever having that thought. Because unfortunately, 400,000 people have died, and a lot of people in our world or country, that's just in our country, assume, yeah, well, they had something else going on. That's unfair, because that something else is not what took them. COVID accelerated it. So that's something else I want to say, and just say it very real and bluntly. No one's going to change my mind on that now. That is how I feel. So,
yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're on the other side of this, Joe. The world's a better place with you in it, my man.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. So thank you very much. And thank both of you guys for your time today and kind of re-walking down that road of recovery, I guess we'll call it,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So
yeah. Get this trauma out of you.
Yeah. Well, honestly, this was like a free counseling session. Right? This is one of the reasons I've never had to see a psychologist or anything in my life, because I have people like you in my life I can just vent it all out to and be done with it. So
yep.
And create some awesome content while you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So no confidentiality agreements here.
Nope.
So, all right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for being on the show. Vic, I love you. You were my rock through the whole thing. Chris, how much I appreciate what you do for us on the podcast, and I'm glad the people that tune in got to hear you. I know Chris has his own podcast too, so he was kind of perfect to be on. Yeah, like I said, I appreciate everybody that supported me through it. Like I said, every employee I had, my daughter, I'm glad she's better. My fiance, everybody that I love that had it. Glad you all made it through with me, and looking forward to getting the vaccine. So, so that's it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Guys. Great job. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Victoria.
Oh, you're welcome.